Wow. Yo, we should just chop that section off and just have people pay for that one tidbit you just said, because that was gold. No, I'm just playing. This is all free, fam.
It looks something like this.
What's going on, everyone, from BTS TV Media? I'm your host, Frank, and you are tuning into the BTS Biz Podcast, where we interview business experts and they reveal their industry knowledge to us. Today's episode is sponsored by Finest City Entertainment, the finest in live event production and broadcast media. On today's episode, we have from Movetic, their brand strategist, who's worked with businesses such as Lyft and Celsius, Ben Rogers. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us about what you do and the company you work for.
Yeah, so I guess an overview of kind of my role at Movetic is, as you mentioned, brand strategist. My role is really to help companies that we identify, that come to us or that we seek out, really identify some projects and work and deliverables that we can help them with to really help extend their brand, whether it be website design and development, brand design, photography and media, video, things like that. But really just helping the brands that are sort of in the forefront of their industry just to stand out more and reach your audiences more effectively.
Definitely. So there's a little bit of overlap of what we do as well. We're a little heavier on the video side, but your guys' design is fire. We're going to have to get together after to talk about some stuff. But brand strategy. You know, a lot of companies, they don't really recognize strategy as something important for their business. What is brand strategy and why is it important for businesses?
Yeah, when we talk about brand strategy, I think a lot of it stems at certainly the early stages of the business. So, when you're getting started, you've identified a product or a service that you want to create and market to consumers. I think a lot of the intention and value that you bring to consumers, whether it be B2B or B2C, really starts at the beginning, identifying who those audiences are that you want to go after, the types of value propositions that you're promoting to those audiences, the look and feel of the brand and the media and everything that you portray to those audiences, I think is just super important. And it's something that needs to be identified early on for the business because we've noticed that companies that have that true north and really have that core offering and consistent look and feel are the ones that can reach consumers and really build a long-term relationship with them.
Nice, dude. Love it. I feel like I'm talking to like an older version of myself over here. Yeah. So how did you get into this? Like, share your story of how you got to where you're at right now.
Yeah, so I guess first things first, you can probably hear my Australian accent. I came to the States in 2012, grew up in a town called Sorrento, just south of Melbourne, one of our cities, and played golf for San Diego State for a couple of years. So 2012 came over, I played golf my whole life growing up, and came over, did a couple of years of golf, and then I think after that I sort of started to move more into like a career-focused, goals and objectives and things like that. Golf was a pretty tough industry or career, I think, to crack for a lot of athletes. I mean, any sport is in college, but decided to get more into the business, the marketing, the advertising space. And over the course of, I would say, last 5 to 8 years or so, I've just gradually been picking up experience at a group of different agencies and companies from, digital marketing side, social media, paid social, search, email, all those different things. I did a year and a half at an out-of-home agency called Outfront Media, who do a lot of billboard advertising around the country. And then most recently joined Movetic over the last couple of years to do more brand strategy and sort of seeing how a lot of these different platforms and advertising mediums kind of play into the big picture. There's not just one strategy that a brand should be utilizing for success. There should be anywhere from 5 to 10, 15, 20 different channels that really drive revenue and end up building value within a consumer's audience or a brand's audience.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've worked with other agencies as well. There's so many agencies out there and new ones coming up and whatnot. But San Diego's huge. What made you choose Movetic and how did you find Movetic? Yeah,
so actually when I started moving out of sort of golf and more into this like business type career stuff, I tried to do as many internships as I could, finding agencies through friends or friends of friends that had marketing or advertising expertise. And one of my good friends, who's actually a business partner that I started a business with here in San Diego, Connor Sanna, he got me connected with Movetic. He was doing an internship with them, doing more social media stuff. And I connected with him just to see how it could provide value and just learn, because I knew they did a lot of creative, design-focused projects, and they were just really getting started. So I started with them doing some copywriting, some blog posting and things like that. And, kind of went off and did my own thing for a couple of years at these different agencies I mentioned. And then, we actually did a billboard campaign for one of their clients, San Diego Aviators, while I was working at Outfront. And I'd still been in touch with the guys that own the company, and they started since back in the day. But yeah, after that campaign, we realized that we were a pretty good fit for each other. I like to think of myself as a creative guy and just constantly learning on the brand side. So connected with them a couple of years later, and after the campaign, they sort of just asked me to jump over, and yeah, here I am.
That's awesome. And the name Movetic is pretty cool too. I'm sure people get it confused with Movetic, and being Australian, I know they're huge on sports over there. And is it true that in Australia you guys have like a sports day, like one day a week? I don't know. I've heard this. This might be a rumor, but are you guys really big on sports over there? Or is this all just a front you guys are putting up?
I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever going to be as big on sport as America, right? Like
Okay.
the NFL and all these different sports that we have playing in college. Like that's the whole reason I came over, was because Australia doesn't have as much of an emphasis in university for students to be doing their academics as well as playing sport. And the college system in America really helps cater towards the athletes that want to get an education as well. So I don't know if we have a sports day necessarily. Like we definitely did the whole PE type stuff
Had to
in high
confirm
school.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
Enough said.
But-
well, the reason I'm saying that, sorry to cut you off, is because you said you play golf, and Movetic sounds like move. It kind of sounds like an athletic company. How did the name Movetic come to be?
Yeah, so it's a combination of movement and aesthetics. So we talk about movement more in the context of just continually progressing as a company, just constantly finding that next thing that you can do to really set yourself apart. And aesthetics kind of referring more to the creative side. So storytelling, engaging people from a visual standpoint, from the website to the media that you push out and things like that. So it's just kind of a combination of both of those things.
That's really cool. A lot of meaning behind that. And, let's talk about your highlights and your lowlights a little bit of your day-to-day. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so we do a ton of meetings from the start, like helping a lot of the brands in earlier stages and any of the clients or prospects that we speak with, really just identifying what are the key challenges they're having. At Movetic, we have a set of core services from strategy, so really setting that true north, like I mentioned from the beginning. We have branding, so your identity and your messaging. Your website, so designing and developing websites that are really going to attract and provide value for the brands that we work with. And then the media side, my main goal is to have conversations, as many as I can, with these brands, both large and small, and help them identify, what's going to be the best ROI or the best, deliverables or content that we can create for them in order to make the biggest impact.
And it sounds like, there's obviously a lot of things going on with being a brand strategist. What's your favorite part?
I would probably say just at the end of a lot of the projects, we work with a lot of clients on a very personal level. We're all about collaboration, and we can't do our jobs without getting to know the industry and the business that we partner with, and vice versa. We want to teach them and train them on as much as possible. So learning and sort of seeing that end result that we can create from anywhere from brands to websites to videos and things like that. Just the satisfaction and the value that we get from just having the gratification of a great project done is really sort of the end goal for us.
Kind of seeing the look on their faces with those results. But what about strategizing within Movetic? How does that look like?
So in terms of strategizing for the agency? Or?
Yeah, for yourselves. I mean, you guys are strategizing a lot for these other, for your clients. But do you guys sometimes feel you find it hard to give yourself time to strategize for yourselves, or how does that look like for you guys? Are you guys allocating that?
Yeah, we're such a small agency. We're only about 10 to 11 people, so we're still, I think, on the growing side. So we do experience those growing pains. In terms of our end goal, we have these clients that we work with that we're constantly meeting with and really providing, solutions for the issues that they have. But something we've been working a lot more on, like similar to you guys, is just the content creation. So things like LinkedIn and podcasting and stuff like that is really, how can we provide as much value and scalable content that we can share with as many people as possible? And the end goal for that is, when people see some valuable content, they want to talk more about it and explore more for their business, how they can help that. Ideally they come to us and we open up a dialogue.
Nice. And then, you said, 11, 12 people are on the Movetic agency. Talk about being a small company, because we're about the same size here at BTS, and I find that it's easier to push, process improvements through. If I want to execute something, I find it easier to push through because there's less of a chain of command or people that I have to get through in order to make something happen. Do you feel like that's true for you guys as well? And what would you say the benefits are of working with a small agency or a small team versus working with like a huge agency?
Yeah, so I've definitely had experience with both of those. I've worked with large agencies like Outfront, for example, was several hundred people working on campaigns across the country, and then Movetic, a much smaller agency. I think there's definitely pros and cons to both. Like on the larger agency side, you have the benefit of multiple team members and large departments where you can sort of pull value from these different sections and learn as much as possible. And a lot of those processes are really established, right? In terms of the marketing and the sales and the dialogues and the communication that happens within the company is pretty set, right? But for smaller agencies, it's kind of like you want to grow, but you've got to kind of pick up as you go certain efficiencies and processes that can be improved. The greatest thing I think, I always tell a lot of people getting into marketing that if you can work with a smaller company that does a lot of things, you're going to be less siloed into a specific department, and it's going to give you an opportunity, especially earlier on in your career, to learn different facets of marketing and advertising. So, the great thing is you can test out different departments and work with different personnel and learn, a variety of different things. And I think that's the true value that you get working with a smaller agency, is just your ability to continue learning, a bunch of different aspects.
Mm-hmm. And you've talked about growing pains, and it sounds like that's a good problem to have, and you guys are growing. Talk about how you guys overcome those growing pains.
Yeah, I would say just people management and just managing these constant projects that are coming in that aren't necessarily accounted for in people's roles and responsibilities, right? If you're trying to get from a 10-person agency to the 20, 30-person agency, there's always going to be things that have to be done that aren't necessarily under someone's job description. So I think that the culture of everyone continuing to push forward and take on extra tasks and get things done that aren't necessarily expected of them is huge. And I think it starts a lot with the culture and sort of getting in the mindset of we're all in this together for the long haul.
Okay, and that leads me perfectly into how do you coach your team members when everyone is still learning? Maybe you're that senior leader, that senior brand strategist on the team. You're bringing on a new team member. How does that coaching process look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a part of a team of, I would say, 1 to 2 people. So There's not so much leadership going on. When we get to that stage of having more employees, I would love to take on a leadership role and do more of that. But I think in terms of people taking on responsibilities and learning and things like that, I think you have to have a very open mind. And like I mentioned, it starts from the top, and having a culture of leadership in there who are really promoting, cross talents and cross communication so that we can all continue to be learning. And I think during that process, you start to see either employees or people within the company who start to take a little bit more of an interest in one aspect over another. And then as you continue to grow, maybe they take more ownership over those types of projects. Okay.
And what do you feel like those key elements are that make that strong team? When, you have that team, you guys are sitting together, and you guys have that team, you're sitting together and you're collaborating on a project. What are those, those key characteristics in a person that you find are very helpful?
I think being just open to collaborating and being willing to ask questions. I love the fact that at Movetic, we're on calls, or I used to say meetings, but now calls more often on Zoom and Hangouts and things, just encouraging that ability to ask questions. I think when you get into a larger type agency, and like I mentioned, you get siloed in specific departments, you tend to get a little stifled with not necessarily asking questions, but just taking things as they are. So I think that having the mindset of being open to ideas and exploring ideas, that's how you find breakthroughs and real big successes, not just within the agency, but with clients as well. So just having that willingness to explore options and look at new ideas and take ideas from different agencies or companies around the place is hugely important.
And you talked about like calls versus meetings. With this pandemic, how has that really like been affecting Movetic?
Yeah, I mean, we do work with clients across the country and sometimes even internationally. So, we're very used to the whole Google Hangouts type thing. So it hasn't really changed us for the most part in a huge way. But there is definitely complications, I think, internally with getting on meetings, and sometimes people's internet doesn't work and things like that. So it's just kind of just understanding that's the way that things are now. We're not going back to the office until 2021. But I think what a lot of companies have realized is that if you can get past the issues of like the internet and the connection issues and things like that, like you can still have a pretty valuable dialogue and communication. And so we're sort of getting used to it now. It's becoming a little bit more ingrained in the way we work.
And I kind of want to backtrack a little bit to, talking about your favorite part of, doing what you do. What would you say is your favorite brand identity that's out there?
Out there in general, or out there that we've worked with?
Medium, big business, whatever. You see. Have you heard of Chris Do?
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
I mean, he's worked with a lot of big name clients. Are there any of his clients that you feel like, wow, that like, or even like Hamilton Family Brewery, like the way they just completely changed it from like the really small company feel, but they kept that vibe, but they really changed up the design.
That is one of, I think, the most valuable podcast series that I've ever seen. Like the way that they broke down and their willingness to be transparent and show people like, this is how it's done, that they have no fear that competitors are going and rip their process and things like that. I think they were incredibly open about how that works. And I think it just gains a lot of respect from marketers and brands in general that can see exactly how things are done and how things should be done. So that was a very valuable series. I would recommend anyone watching that wants to get into branding and how to position a company, because it was really enlightening and very similar to some of the processes that we do at Movetic. Back to your question about what's one brand. I don't know if I have a specific brand in mind that's like the epitome. I think from what I've learned, like in different industries and different agencies and different mediums and channels and things like that, there's so much that goes into a successful brand. And I think it's important for a lot of companies to really pay attention to all those different channels that they're communicating with customers on. So some brands do a fantastic job of building a website experience. Other brands do a great job of positioning their color palettes and their typography. And then other brands do a great job of media and photography and video and things like that. I will say locally, a brand that I think I've really looked up to recently that have done a fantastic job is probably Juneshine. Kombucha.
Killing it, yeah.
Yeah, they have done a good job of positioning their brand for the California audience. They've created a great website experience. When the pandemic hit, they transitioned into e-commerce and delivery and things like that. And then the paid advertising and channels that they're using, from just organic social to paid social and all these different things. Like I even saw them posting on LinkedIn, paid LinkedIn ads and things like that. So, their ability to keep a consistent message and then spread that across different platforms has been killer.
Yeah, they've definitely been killing it on LinkedIn. Some of the billboard stuff they've been putting out is just hilarious too. You drink Juneshine?
I love Juneshine. Yeah.
What's your favorite flavor? Or your top two?
Favorite flavor? Jeez, I can't even remember. Acai berry is probably the only one I can think of, but like I'll try any of them. I haven't been a huge beer drinker, like the IPAs and stuff like that. I know San Diego's huge for craft beer. I just
they did a smart collab with the Stone Brewery, and they called it Stone Shine.
Yeah.
What a genius move. Yeah, they're definitely killing it. Back to the future and the blind agency with Chris Do. Just intuitively, what do you feel like makes them such a successful company or brand?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on this earlier, just their ability to not be afraid to show their secret sauce and how they find success. I'm sure there's a lot more that goes into it than what they show. But at the same time, they're far more transparent than any other agency, any other company. And so just providing that content, they've got such a priority on getting as much value into their YouTube channels and their different channels that they use, is sort of where they get the most attention. And brands can go to them and learn a ton about branding and website design and art direction and things like that. But the way I think that they're positioned to convert consumers and brands into clients is, people see all this stuff and like, this is fantastic and it's great to see how you can build a brand, but I don't have the time to do this stuff. So I want to find an agency that can do that for me. And so that they'll probably be the number one call and the first call for people that are looking to make that step.
Yeah, and they've worked with so many different brands. And speaking of working with a bunch of different brands, how do you deal with those difficult clients? How do you manage those expectations up front?
Yeah, that's a great question. It certainly comes down to the beginning of the project and really setting expectations. We're very clear and we're very transparent about what the deliverables are that we're providing for clients, what the timeline is, when they can expect feedback, and we're pretty heavy on the communication side. We'll have weekly meetings with clients to check in and give a status update on where things are at. So I think it's important and imperative to set those expectations from the beginning. And a lot of the challenges and issues that we've had with clients in the past, which isn't a lot, but the ones we have had, we've experienced have come from not setting those expectations. So if clients, for example, I did a post on LinkedIn the other day about a client who shall remain nameless to us that had a lot of potential. They had some pretty big stakeholders invested in this new brand, and they requested that we shorten or consolidate our strategy and initial art direction process because I think they didn't want to spend the budget on strictly getting the art direction when they wanted to focus more on, say, packaging or some brand elements that they were building out. And we decided that, hey, it could be a big opportunity if they blow up, that, we could have some good results and things like that. But it got down to it that we shortened our process. We changed the way that we do things normally, and it ended up just creating a headache in terms of what the client was expecting and what the results were that we were creating for them. So I think you've just got to be transparent throughout the whole process and say, hey, look, this is where we're at. This is what we're creating. And as long as you do that and you're communicating effectively with the clients, you can really nip those things in the bud before they tend to blow up in your face.
No, yeah, thanks for sharing that with us because, not a lot of people would be willing to share things like that. Do you ever have clients, this might sound weird, do you ever have clients that are like, oh, we don't want to be on YouTube or we don't want to be on Instagram? Like, do you think that, all those outlets are necessary? Which ones do you feel like are the key ones that clients should be using?
Yeah, I don't think we have. I think now, Instagram and Facebook have probably been around a solid 10 years, and it's very uncommon for us to come across clients who are like, hey, we don't want to be putting content out there and things like that. Like the free reach that you get from Instagram and Facebook and email and things like that is almost too good to turn down, and it's pretty self-explanatory. But in terms of like building value through those channels, I think a lot of people are starting to realize that like the more stories that you can tell and the creative that you can really share with consumers is what's going to build value for your brand in the long term. And branding is more than just designing a logo and creating a color palette and things like that. It's about creating a consistent set of touch points across all these different channels, telling the same story that people can buy into, and then from there, you have these long-term relationships with consumers or clients, whether it's B2B or B2C, that you can really grow with, and that's kind of the end goal for us at Movetic.
Nice. And we have a process at BTS for qualifying potential clients to actually become clients, and that's our discovery call. We set up a call, we solve a few problems, find out what this potential client is looking for, and then we establish if it's, we're a right fit and we want to take it to the next step. Do you guys do that same exact thing, or what does that look like for you guys to qualify clients?
Yeah, no, it's very similar. I think a lot of agencies kind of run the same way. You'll get introduced or you'll get in contact with a potential prospect or client. Our role is to effectively and correctly identify what those challenges are, and then also find the right solutions for those clients. And some of the biggest challenges that we come across, and every agency I think comes across, a timeline and budget. And both of those things really greatly affect the outcome and the realistic potential for you to work with those clients. So I think identifying those issues and getting a preliminary idea of what those solutions look like that you offer, and then also understanding, what the timeline is and the expectation of when this has to be done. If there's any deadlines that need to be hit, whether it's a restaurant launch or a launch of a new product or something like that. And then understanding, if they have the resources and the budget to sort of work within the realm of possibility with your agency, you've got to kind of identify that at the beginning, because you don't want to get 2 weeks down the project.
Always that budget. How do you know if that it's an accurate budget, or how do you manage that to your clients?
Yeah, this is kind of getting more into the sales side. You kind of realize that companies can be a little bit guarded with those types of things, right? They don't want to be showing all their cards at the beginning, and it's something that we focused on at Movetic, is being transparent, right? Like, we're all about putting everything on the table and showing you guys everything it's going to take to get from A to Z. And some of the issues that we've come across in the industry and with agencies is that they tend to be seen as sometimes a little shifty, like trying to get as much money out of the client as possible. And so we're trying to make that transition to be transparent, and as much as we can, we try to say, hey, look, what are you guys working with? And whatever that answer can be, we'll find a way to give you guys a solution that might potentially work. At the end of the day, it's their decision, but we try to find solutions that will work within their realm of possibility. And if that's not the case, and they're like, hey, we want to be guarded with this kind of stuff, and we'll make a decision and things like that, we're not afraid to say, hey, look, from what you're looking for, it sounds like this would be the best solution, and we can expect that the cost and the price and things like that for this type of project is going to be between X and Y. So we're very transparent early on, and at the end of the day, it just saves time on both the client side and our side to get to the solution.
Yeah, I'm hearing a key theme of transparency with Movetic, which is, super important. How do you establish, transparency, trust with your client's brand and their consumers?
Yeah, that's probably, I would say, from my perspective, the most important thing when it comes to just general business practices. We see early on in the digital space, paid advertising and things like that was really focused about converting customers and like, hey, here's this product, you should buy it. Here's the best thing about it, But kind of moving forward into this digital space with such saturated platforms like Instagram and Facebook and things like that, consumers are looking and most likely to buy from the brands that are telling their story, they're showing who's behind the team, they're being honest about the ingredients and the product values that they bring. And there's so much value that comes from just opening the doors and being open to people and sharing the stories. So, transparency is something that I think is just increasing in value when it comes to business success. And like, you guys have mentioned a couple of times the whole Yelp conversation. Brands that are, or businesses, I should say, like Yelp, for example. Like, imagine if Yelp had a Yelp page. Ooh. The people reviewing that would be the businesses that are experiencing those sales calls from people on the Yelp side. They're getting, almost enticed into improving their reviews and improving the likelihood that they're going to get sales if they spend money. Probably wouldn't be a good look. So I think the concept of Yelp and helping people share feedback and ideas and be transparent is great. But the business model behind Yelp, I think, is something that hasn't really been explored too much.
Wow. You put that into words so well, because Yelp is important. It may not be the ideal business model, but have you ever came up with your own ideas or innovations for, our industry of branding?
Not really. I don't know if I'm smart enough to come up with those solutions on my own. But I think one of the challenges that we kind of have within this industry of branding, and more specifically, brand identity and brand messaging and things like that, it's not as easy as to find ROI and return on certain investments on that standpoint on branding as it is for, say, digital marketing and things like that. Digital and paid advertising and things like that are very data driven, and you're almost getting instant feedback on how you can improve those types of processes. Whereas branding is certainly more of a long-term play, right? Like, you're creating a logo and the identity and the look and feel and the story of the brand that should permeate across all these different channels that you're pushing your brand out on. So, if there are a way somehow to have this multi-attribution type analysis to understand, what aspects of branding are providing value and to what degree. That would be sort of the dream solution for us.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have to come up with something for that. So branding long term, you do a lot of that for clients. What's been your favorite client so far? And what were the challenges of working with that client?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to say I'm going to go back to this, and the guys at Movetic are probably going to hate me for saying this, or maybe not. But Skrewball has been kind of like our flagship brand that we've worked with since the start. And I actually came into
Skrewball the drink?
Skrewball Whiskey.
Oh,
yeah,
wow, nice.
Yeah. So they started. It's actually born. If you don't know the story, it's born out of the Stephen and Brittany Yang out of OB Noodle House in Ocean Beach. And they used to serve I believe it was Jameson and peanut butter shots to a lot of their customers and tenants or guests that came into the restaurant, and they just ended up blowing up. Like, people would come in every Friday and come and get the shots and things like that. And I think eventually they decided that, like, hey, let's create a brand and a product out of this. And for us at Movetic, they came to us essentially with the product, and they came to us with, I believe, the name Skrewball. That was pretty much it. So I actually came in the tail end of building out that brand, so I wasn't necessarily hands-on with it. But seeing the final product and how much they've grown since they launched in 2018, I believe, or late 2017, has been insane. And it's probably one of the best examples of everything we do at Movetic, from the building out the brand, the identity, the messaging, the labeling and packaging, to the website experience and creating more of a millennial-focused experience for consumers, and then the video, the photo, the content that comes with all that. It's just really like an all-inclusive project for us. And so I just think it's a brand that's done really well, sticking to their guns, telling a consistent story over the years, and they've grown immensely. I think they're in all 50 states at the moment. And they've already turned down a couple of offers to get bought out and things like that. So I think that's like a really good testament to our ability to be creative storytellers in that sense.
That's crazy, because my friends absolutely love Skrewball.
Yeah.
And now here we are talking about it on the podcast. What was, like, how much time would you say that you feel like you have to spend with the brand to really understand their brand? And what, because I feel like sometimes it can be complex. Like, you have product brands, you have service brands. Do you feel like you have better luck with products versus services?
Yeah. Well, we definitely put a big priority on the early stages of client communication in our projects. So when we kick off a project with a client, we go through a pretty extensive discovery meeting with all of our team members and all their team members. From there, we go through art direction and profiling of customers, competitive analysis and things like that. And I don't think, from my experience, a lot or as much emphasis has been put on the value that brings as should have been, right? Like, we have a ton of brands that don't really know the message and the story that they're telling. And us as a branding agency, our strengths come from really understanding who that client is and the value that they bring, and then creating an action plan to be able to share that story and create the assets that are going to best tell that story of their brand. So it's definitely a long process in the beginning, and it's certainly undervalued, I think. But the better you get to know a brand as an agency, and the better you get to know the people behind it and the motivation that pushes them to succeed, the better you are able to tell their story and create the right solutions for them as a company.
Nice. Yeah, it's kind of like the same thing with us with pre-production at BTS TV Media. Before we actually start shooting that video, we do all our pre-production work up front, establish everything that we want for the quality of that video, and then by the time we actually go to shooting and producing the video, it's all a smooth process from there.
I don't think anyone realizes what goes into the pre-production process for photography and video. Everything from initial concepting, and because we do a ton of lifestyle photo shoots, and the pre-production process of identifying the themes, the look and the feel, the colors that you want to suit the brand, the influences or the talent that you're using, down to the clothes that they're wearing, the locations you're shooting. Like, that's just a few of the things that go into it, but it's just a gradual process of creating this final set direction that you can really execute on. And it's something that we really prioritize, because the better you can do that, the better you can tell their story.
Nice. Do you have any current projects that you guys are working on that you'd like to share?
I would say a couple that's under wraps.
Okay. Which ones can you share?
We've just recently worked with, started working with a brand out of, east, a little bit further east in land of, I believe I'm going to butcher it, but it could be out of Chicago, but one of the central states, and they're called Sugar Grove, and they're basically a cannabis brand that's creating flower and different cannabis products that they're bringing to market. And we're kind of working with them on more of the branding side, so the identity and the messaging of the brand, and then finally down the road into the packaging and things like that, and how they present themselves on shelves. They've been great to work with. They sort of understand the process and the value that comes from branding. So any clients that we can get that are looking to tell their story effectively and really understand the value that it brings to create that consistent look and feel, I think are brands that we want to work with. So just constantly looking for those partners that can grow with us.
Yeah, the cannabis industry is booming.
Yeah.
How do you perform, like, let's say for them, the consumer research, like really identifying their ideal client, and how do you know you're hitting the mark with specific campaigns for their brand?
Yeah, so we always say, like, our client knows their brand and knows their business and their audience better than anyone else, right? So when they start to get into the idea of building their business and building out their brand per se, it's important for us to get as much information and value from them as we can at the beginning. Then as we explore through their internal beliefs and their internal information and values, we then start looking into the external. So the competitors, the audience, the trends within those industries, within those certain geographic locations. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where we marry both the internal and the external to get to that final solution that we're crafting.
Yeah, I agree, because when I'm doing strategy as well, we get a lot of that feedback straight from the business themselves. But what would you do in a situation if the client doesn't know what they're exactly going for? How do you help them, kind of create that messaging and create that ideal target audience?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone starts a business without knowing why, right? Like there has to be some sort of opportunity that they identify. But if they really don't know about the target audience and the competitors and things like that, like we'll probably just go a little bit more extensively, and maybe we have to do a little bit more research on the data and the trends within those areas that we can really identify. But a lot of the time, it's just marrying sort of their thoughts and feelings towards the opportunity that they have, and then us taking a little bit more of an outside look in.
Have you guys ever looked at your clients' competitors and seeing what they're doing and kind of funnel hack your way through their branding?
Absolutely.
And applied it to your clients?
Yeah, I guess firstly, just looking at competitors within the industry is super important, because there's a lot of brands up there, especially at the top of their industry, that are doing some great things. From just branding and positioning in general to the media that they're using to push the lifestyle or push the products themselves, and then down to the paid advertising. So the copywriting and the ads and the executions of what channels they're marketing and advertising on, that's incredibly valuable, and you can get so much inspiration from those types of channels. Even Facebook ads platform, where you can see your competitors, the ads that they're running on social, that's a hack that not a lot of people utilize, but you can literally see the back end of what they're doing, where they're advertising, and sort of what value propositions they're pushing. And another thing as well, I think, is Movetic works in countless industries and verticals. We're not strictly alcohol or cannabis, although they've been two industries we've done a hell of a lot of work in. We do B2B, we do B2C, we do e-commerce, we do non-profits, we do beverages and food products and fashion and things like that. So there's so many different industries. And I think the great thing is we've been able to pull insights from these different industries and what these other companies in these different verticals are doing well, and applying that to the industry that's specific to the client. It's not just you've got to use all of the tools that you have in a specific vertical. There's so many great things that different companies do across the board that you can continually learn from and apply to the brands that you work with.
True. I mean, it's literally, like you said, it's literally all in front of our face,
Yeah.
All you got to do is just click on the ad, read that copy, see their design, think about why they're doing what they're doing. And something that I do a lot is I'll actually save the ads, and I'll have a bookmark for saved ads. And you could even niche it down and be like, ads for these different types of industries. And then if we have a client in that specific industry, I could just refer to and just kind of spark some ideas. Do you find yourself doing things like that too? Or?
Oh, absolutely. My Instagram, I have like 20 different like saved collections of different brands and topics and content ideas and things like that. It's just so useful. I mean, you constantly need to be pushing what's possible. If you're doing, the same thing over and over again for 5 years, you're going to be 10 years behind. And, it's just about finding that next big thing. And I will say, to you guys' credit and, the media in general, just being able to constantly push the value of video, whether it's short form or long form, is going to have a huge impact on business success, I think, in the future. We're just looking at the data, seeing how much more engagement and viewership video has from a social standpoint is unparalleled, I think, and I think it's just constantly growing. So finding what's valuable for consumers and just pushing that as much as possible.
Nice. And is there any specific like data points that you could speak on, or I'm sure there's so many, but for now I'm kind of interested, because video, you know what I'm saying, fam. But what specific data points with video have you noticed? Like, are the trends going more towards long form video, short form video? I mean, with TikTok, like it's all short form. Then Instagram capitalized on a sort of TikTok like feature. Do you feel like it's all going more towards short form? Because I'm sure there's people watching this podcast, and not everybody's going to be clicking and sitting and watching this podcast the whole time. But what we're going to do is we're going to chop off bits of this podcast and post like 15, 30-second clips on Instagram, kind of repurposing it.
Exactly, yeah. I would say I don't think there's any one form of video that's most successful. They serve different purposes, right? Like long form, for example, is great for, people who are interested in learning more about the brand itself and the history and the story behind them and the people behind the business. That's great for example, putting on the website. When people are going through a liquor website necessarily, they might not be trying to order the alcohol itself. They might just be trying to learn more about the brand or the products that they offer. And that's a great place for a long form piece of content, right? Short form, conversely, is a lot more used on like the paid social aspect. As people are scrolling, people are getting used to like clicking through stories.
To grab their attention.
Yeah,
to hold it.
Yeah, it's much more valuable to be able to just constantly keep reminding consumers about the products or the business itself. So I think they serve different purposes, and no one is better than the other. I think it's just about what form do we want to create and what sort of value is that going to bring to consumers.
Yeah, completely agree. Wasn't sure if there was any data points that were suggesting certain trends.
I didn't bring my list of like data points.
No.
I can make one up.
Come on, man. Why didn't you know? I know now we're starting to get into complex talk about data points and trends. But for those new people who are getting into the branding industry, what's your one piece of advice you'd give to somebody who's just trying to do what you do? You've worked hard to get to where you're at now.
Yeah. I would say probably a couple of things. I think the first thing is branding is so much more. I said this earlier, and branding is so much more than just a single deliverable or project or touch point that you're creating. Branding is a collection of every single engagement and view from a potential customer. And it's just everything that they potentially might see throughout the day-to-day, from billboards to a TV ad to a social media post and things like that really contributes to that final I'd say opinion or concept of what that brand is and what they represent. So taking a very holistic view on these different channels and understanding that one platform such as Instagram might affect someone differently than watching a YouTube video or being on the website and things like that. So trying to understand how all of those different touch points fit together, I think is of huge importance. And I think that's kind of where the future of branding is going. And the second thing I would say is, for companies or brands just getting into building their business at the beginning, I would say as early as possible, it's important to focus on the brand elements at the beginning, like your identity and your messaging, the story that you tell and things, like getting that ironed out at the beginning, because we have so many companies that come to us who have been in the industry 5, 10 years, 15 years, and they're sending mixed messages to their consumers. And what that does is it gives an inconsistent message, and what someone says on one platform versus another, if that differs, consumers can subconsciously, a lot of the time, be a little bit off-put by, this brand doesn't really know what their true value is that they're bringing. So really identifying that at the beginning and having this, concept of what we do and what we do right and why, is of huge importance, because once you have that, you've got the conviction to share that on as many platforms as you want, and people are going to be seeing the same thing. So that just really builds brand loyalty in the long run.
Wow. Yo, we should just chop that section off and just have people pay for that one tidbit you just said, because that was gold. No, I'm just playing. This is all free, fam. Well, thanks for being on the show, man. That was a great way to end the show. Where can people find y'all? Where's the best place to be? Because I know they could find you on Instagram or your website. Is it your website? You guys have a pretty dope website.
Yeah, thank you.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, we try to make it as we're a bunch of like 30 and under employees or a group at Movetic, so we're pretty young, and we really try to focus a lot on more of the millennial brands, the ones that are trying to be creative and be engaging and tell a story and keep their attention. So our website was really flashy and sort of incorporates a lot of the different things that we can do. Sometimes maybe it's a little overwhelming, but we try to show that off as much as possible. So
it worked on me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to check out Movetic, you can see us on Instagram, Movetic, Movetic. You can also go to our website, themovetic.com. And me personally, if you want to check me out, I do a ton of stuff on LinkedIn, so you can probably find me if you just go to LinkedIn and put in Ben Rogers, and then Instagram. I just changed my handle. I used to be Rogers Golf, and I think people started to see I wasn't doing as much golf stuff, so I've kind of rebranded myself. Yeah,
That's awesome.
But it's just Ben Rogers, BenRogaz. Yeah,
nice.
Try to put my first name in there and get something.
Let's
with
go.
a Z. Yeah.
All right, Ben, thanks for being on the show. Again, my name is Frank with BTS TV Media. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and we will see you on the next episode.
Well, I have a wonderful electronic invention I want you to see.
See?
It looks something like this.